So last week, Anthropic launched Claude Fable on Tuesday, and on Thursday, we launched version 2 of our MCP. So the stars aligned, one of them a little bit bigger than the other one, but we thought on Friday that we should give Fable access to the Semilattice MCP and see what it can do. So this is the video of that. I'm going to walk you through it. It's pretty interesting. First off, I just opened up a fresh Claude Code session, completely empty project, and connected the Semilattice MCP, mcp.semilattice.ai, authenticated it, and then I got it to list our user models, which is a good way to just test that the connection is there. So then it gets all of the user models and sees all of those and all their accuracy numbers, etc., etc. Okay, now into the prompt. So 3 paragraphs here. Firstly, telling Fable you're in a completely empty project folder and your job is to create a software project from scratch for UK consumers related to personal finance, which will pick up at least 100 users. Now, 2 reasons for these constraints. One, we have a lot of public user models that are focused on UK and personal finance. And 2, I didn't want it to have to consider all of the possible products it could build in the world. So I just wanted to get it started down in some particular direction. But that was more or less all I told it to do. I then just kind of said, you make all the decisions. Don't ask me too many questions. And then I told it that it could use Semilattice and what Semilattice can do. And then I just asked it to keep a log of everything. I'm going to go through all the different things it did, but probably not in this log because it started actually recording everything in product log. But it immediately started planning a Semilattice simulation, and it recorded that in the background, so we can't see it here. But I'm going to jump in just to show you that. So the first thing it did is it ran a discovery simulation on UK consumer personal finance pain points. It selected a particular user model to do that. So it selected this UK adults consumer finance one, that's just here. We built this with prolific data from a survey we ran in February 2026. We estimate its accuracy about 90%. And it then used this user model throughout the project, so it focused on a particular kind of user. It ran a bunch of different predictions. These are all planned by Semilattice, so all that Fable would have done is describe that it wanted to do a discovery simulation into this particular topic. It looks like it came up with a sort of kind of category of different things it wanted to investigate. So Semilattice then planned a bunch of predictions, thinking about personal finance tasks you find most frustrating. What do you currently use to deal with it? A dedicated app. What's the biggest frustration you have with money apps, online financial tools you tried? They don't give you useful personalized advice, just data. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to jump back into the project where it did that. And firstly, I'll call out something kind of interesting. What it did is it actually multitasked. So Semilattice simulations, they take a few minutes to run sometimes. We can do sort of one sort of prediction for an audience in about 30 seconds, and we can do about 4 at a time. But it does sometimes take a few minutes depending on how many questions you're predicting. And Fable actually multitasked at the same time. So while this first simulation was running, it looked into the deployment tooling that was available, which I thought was pretty interesting. It made a note of that. Now I'm going to switch over into this product build log that it took notes on. And here is that discovery simulation that it did, and a brief description of it. Bunch of different findings came out of it. I just showed you some in the UI, but also no bank connection is the right call. So 93% of people really prefer that it doesn't link to their bank. Bunch of different things. And then what was interesting is that Fable was very clear-headed about the decisions it made. So from this first simulation, it made 3 decisions. One was to build a budgeting-led tool that gave specific personalized advice. The next was to have no bank linking, no sign up, and that the data would just stay on the device that the tool runs on. And then the third was to explain why the product would be free right at the beginning. So it made 3 very clear decisions. From those decisions, it then went straight into doing a feature prioritization simulation. I'll show you that as well. So another user research simulation, but this time feature prioritization. So focused on 3 ideas that it came up with, what it called the money MOT, money snapshot, and a debt freedom planner. It ran one sort of big question where it described each of those ideas and discovered that the UK adults consumer finance model had a preference for the debt freedom planner. Did a bunch of other question predictions as well. I'm not going to go into the detail about all of these, but again, it then came to a bunch of decisions. So firstly, decided that it would build the debt freedom planner as the product. Then it would make one-tap sharing a core feature because that came out of the simulation. It also decided that copy and clarity, plain language was really important. At this point, I think it's interesting to have a look at how the information that was coming out of the simulations was getting interpreted by Fable and then becoming these decisions and then informing the eventual product that got built. And I asked Fable midway through this process to sort of structure its thinking as a decision graph. So I'll show you this briefly. Here are the upfront constraints, and then this is the first simulation that it runs, the discovery simulation. And then these points are decisions that come out of it. And it's laid out a little bit weirdly, but you can see that these 2 decisions here came out and led to the concept head-to-head, the feature prioritization simulation. Now, it's not totally clear, but there are 2 other decisions that came out of this first discovery simulation. And these, it noted elsewhere, were ready to go straight into the spec. So the spec is here that it eventually ends up writing. And so this point around manual input only, no bank connection confirmed, it didn't need that when it explored concepts because that was a general sort of technical interface principle that could be applied to all concepts. And the trust posture was more of a messaging principle. So it discovered those things from the first simulation and just held them out as decisions that were made to go straight into the spec. So complicated, but this is kind of how these things go sometimes. Now, then when we get to this feature prioritization simulation that happened, again, if we go back to here, we see that it had 5 decisions coming out of that. Now, decision number 3 here is this decision 7 when you count in total around the clarity of the language. And the interesting thing that happened next is it took this decision and then ran a specific simulation to explore it, a headline test. And then all of these other points that came out of it sort of went straight into the spec, which is over there. So the other interesting thing about this is the obvious linear progression of the project would be, do discovery, decide on a concept, go straight into the spec, and then build it. This headline test simulation was sort of like going down a level of abstraction and doing a simulation around a much more specific sub-element of the overall plan. I'll show you that here. So headline test for debt freedom planner, which of the 5 landing page headline options for Semilattice debt-free planning tool generates the strongest stated intent, etc., etc. So I'll show you an example. Imagine you're browsing online for help managing your debts. You see a landing page with this headline, stop guessing, see exactly when you'll get debt-free and how to get there faster. How likely would you be to click and try this tool? A bunch of simulations, predictions like that. If we pop down to the results, it decided on the headline. It decided not to promise speed anywhere in the product. It decided to position the messaging around trust really high up. And then it got some ideas for the launch plan. At this point, it then jumped into the build, and it calls out how all of the validated decisions went into this implementation: the stop guessing hero, no speed claims, the trust, instant debt-free, date, headline, depth below, share buttons, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to show you this here. So here it is. Stop guessing, see exactly when you'll be debt-free, how to get there faster, the sort of signature slop move of an M dash, even though they are a valid piece of grammar and writing. And And so you can see here, this is the sort of trust strip that it talks about, explaining why it's free, calling out these points that came out of the simulations as being important. No bank connection required, data's not going into the cloud. CTA that jumps you straight down here. I've loaded up this example. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but the idea is you plug in your numbers around your current debt situation. You say, show me your plan. It gives you a very actionable plan. So this is the other thing that came out of the initial simulation. People don't just want data, they want actionable, practical advice. So you choose between two strategies, whether you pay off the highest interest first or smallest balance first, and it gives you specific prioritized actions that you can take. Also can give you a month-by-month plan, and then all of the sharing links. Now, the next thing that it did, very interestingly, is it ran a user journey simulation with Semilattice, testing this actual landing page and tool with simulated users. So this is that simulation, and you can see that we sampled 5 different simulated users from the UK adults consumer finance model, and that those simulated users then went through this tool. So here you can see landing on the page, left click on the show me an example, scrolling down, left click on the show me my plan, having a look, scrolling down, switching over to the different strategy, etc., etc. And it then discovered that 3 things were wrong, so it needed to rename the strategies to make them clearer, fix the example button to make it more prominent, and add or in your banking app to how to find the APRs. So then it updated. I'll go back to this and show you the final piece. So here is that usability user journey test that it ran, and then the 3 problems that it found, the 3 decisions it made to fix those problems, and then it got to V1.1, which is actually this one that I showed you. And so it ran 4 simulations, made 12 decisions, 15 decisions, and iterated on its plan a couple of times. And then by the time it got to the final piece, it wrote a launch plan where it wanted me to go on Reddit and start promoting this thing. And that's when I started regretting that I said to get 100 users, because this is a budgeting tool, and I don't think we can really be taking responsibility for people making budgeting decisions. Yeah, that's about it. Pretty impressive what Fable can do, but now no one has access to it. So we'll see if that gets released again. Thanks very much for watching.